Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 253.5 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com. All right, a 0.5 episode means I'm doing something different, and today I have on Brett Bartholomew, no stranger to the podcast. Brett is the creator of the Art of Coaching program and the book Conscious Coaching, and he's a long-standing part of the Strength Coach Podcast. When I first got Nick Winkleman on to do the Art of Coaching segment, and we moved it into an athlete's performance segment, and he started getting on some of the people that were working there. Brett was a big part of that, and I've had him on a bunch of times just because I really love the way he approaches everything that he does, and everything that he does is really thoroughly researched. He really puts everything he has into what he does. And this is a podcast about his new product that's opening on May 1st, and that's called Valued. And I do want to say one thing before I go on. This is not an affiliate thing. I don't make any money on this. I just love Brett. I love what he does, and I think this is a great product. I think it's needed. And basically, Valued is his brand new research-based program, and it's supposed to help you get a job, become indispensable, and really what I think is one of the most important parts is to create a sustainable career in strength and conditioning. Too many times we're just out there drifting, we don't have a plan, and we just kind of get into this business. And Brett didn't do this alone, by the way. There's Andrea Hootie, Ron McKeefrey, Donnell Boucher is in this program. Brett's dad is in it. But this is only out for a couple days. So he only opens the enrollment out. It's May 1st, which is tomorrow, to May 5th. So you have a couple days to try to get in on this, and I'm telling you, it's amazing, and Brett does put everything he's got into what he does. So, you know what? Let's just get him on the phone to talk about Value. All right, welcome to this special episode of the Strength Coach Podcast, and today I got on Brett Bartholomew, and if you don't know Brett, just Google him because I'm not going to go over his long resume. Author of Conscious Coaching and the creator of the Art of Coaching course, and now another course called Valued, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It releases Wednesday, May 1st. It's only going to be open for 5 days, and that's why I wanted to do this as a special episode, and Brett always gives us so much great information. He's been doing this with me for such a long time. He was on the Art of Coaching segment, so many times back in the day, almost 10 years ago, believe it or not, starting almost 10 years ago. But Brett, thanks for doing this.
No, thank you for doing this, man. You're always interested in climbing into new topics as long as they're things that are going to help people. And I think that's one thing that makes your show so interesting to listen to. I mean, how many years have you been doing this now? And it's not the same redundancy you often get in other places. So I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks. I appreciate that. And, look, my mission, and this goes along with what you're talking about in this new course, is, personally, my mission is to help fitness professionals become successful. And whether that's, the free resources that I offer, or, the stuff that I do with Coach Boyle, or bringing my audience, people like you, with these different courses and different ideas. And this goes in line with everything that today I was able to at least watch the introduction and go over and peruse the course, and you gave us a sneak preview last month. But I was telling you, it's funny. We're in this place right now. I'm going to have you talk about this, but we're in this place right now where I went up to yesterday to Providence, and Coach Boyle was doing Functional Strength Coach 7, and I tweeted out because he mentioned so many books, and I think at one point it was like we were at book 15, and I thought about it. It's like there was one training book, and that he had mentioned, and everything else was really like personal development. Was his favorite book is How to Win Friends and Influence People, Never Eat Alone, but all of these things on personal development. And I think it was very telling of where we are right now, and it's very telling with your course of where we are right now as well. So talk to us about really the why and what the problem is. What's the pain that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, the whole essence here is coaches periodize their programming, but very rarely do so in terms of their careers. So a lot of the pain I'm trying to solve is helping strength and conditioning evolve specifically from, just coaches in every sector are struggling. And this was something that I was inherently a little bit curious about when I went out on my own, because I experienced just kind of a lot of self-doubt, a lot of problems I didn't really know how to deal with. Okay, now I've got to understand more than just the X's and O's. It's got to be a lot of business stuff. It's got to be a lot more things outside of my initial ambit of concern. And I looked around and I didn't really see a blueprint for helping coaches, strength coaches in particular, manage their careers. I know there's business seminars that some people do in the fitness world and whatever, and those are definitely valuable. But me being in strength and conditioning, I'd look around and I just couldn't find anything. And so, you look at the state of strength and conditioning, and I want to know if I was alone. So I hired a third-party research firm and sent a list of questionnaires out to coaches to get an idea of what they struggled with. Because now you'd see it all the time on Facebook, on Twitter, coaches saying, hey, we can't get funding for this. Hey, we're short-staffed. A few coaches had written great articles about how they were getting burnout and they were tired of not seeing their family. I know at one point in my career, I could relate. My wife and I barely got a honeymoon. And, it was during a time where I didn't feel like I was being the best husband I could, just because I was so obsessed with everything that was going on with work and trying to provide a future for us and just making sure that we, were on some kind of a path while I was also, trying to be the best strength coach I could be. And what we got was, in total, we did 2 different responses, one around 2,000, one more towards 1,000. So 3,000 in total of coaches in the team setting, private sector, all these different realms saying, listen, in my job, I feel stuck. There's times where I feel burnout. All of them love strength and conditioning, but all of them at the same time were just completely in situations where they were rife with uncertainty. I mean, even people in NBA strength and conditioning, people that were making $200,000, $300,000 a year were like, I'm living on 2-year contracts. There were people that were saying, the first 3 years of my career, I couldn't get enough. I lived in the weight room. I had no concerns, but now I have a family and more than a crock pot to take care of. And I just don't know how to transition. If I retire, I don't know what to do. And so it seemed like I wasn't alone. And so what we wanted to do was look at the psychology of the issue. How did we get ourselves in this rut? And we also wanted to look at the state of strength and conditioning in terms of the overall infrastructure, policies, procedures, and see why this was so common. So that's what we wanted to provide, is an A to Z model from the psychology of the issue, but also strategies of how coaches can really create more viability within their careers.
It's funny because you talk about locus of control, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later. And really, it's interesting. And, there's an internal locus of control and an external. And basically, internal, I'm saying it was my fault. External, I'm saying it was my coach's fault, or it was the school's fault, or strength and conditioning's fault, or fitness's fault. And I really think, you have to, and you talk about some of this self-awareness, you have to understand that, if you keep pointing outside, you're never going to get anywhere. And that's where this course comes in. It's understand, you have to take some responsibility for where you're going. You were talking about periodizing programs. One of the first thing I do in my coaching program with people, not one of the first thing, it is the first thing, is it's finding your mission. What is it? Where do you want to end? Start with the end in mind. Can you talk to us about, that piece of it and taking responsibility in this self-awareness piece?
Yeah, a lot of this, the self-awareness goes back to stuff I talked about in conscious coaching.
Yeah.
It was the chapter that everybody seemed to skip over just to get to the archetypes that talked about the 3 stages of internal identification. And the gist of it within this course is that, for years we've seen people say, hey, somebody needs to evaluate us. We need sport coaches to be educated in exactly what we do. We need, it was all these other issues that needed to be done. It was what these governing bodies should do. It was but really it's our fault. And in totality, it's funny, even doing, an Instagram survey. I think we had 2,000 responses. I said, who's in charge of your career, or helping you progress? And, 70 some odd percent said it's us ourselves, but there was still a large percentage, that relatively speaking, that said governing bodies. And I think people just misattribute, do our governing bodies have a responsibility? For sure. But at the end of the day, it's no excuse for a strength coach to be lazy. nobody's coming to save us. Like nobody's going to provide the perfect solution where, you know what, as long as you got your degree, you did your internships and all these things, it's not some governing body's job to get you the job in every stage of your career that you want. That's on you. And I just think that our strategies have become really outdated because career development strategy is not taught. It's not openly discussed. It's not prioritized. I mean, anytime you go to these major conferences, if that stuff is discussed, it's like 6 a.m. in the exhibition hall, and the main stage is doing its third thing on speed or cleans. And I just think that it's something that people have inherently looked at. Well, if you're talking about your career or your concerns, you're selfish. This isn't about us. And so the course even talks about the psychology of that as well. Like, how people are kind of really using that as a manipulative and controlling tactic. They're almost kind of feigning humility in a way to kind of control others. But yeah, it's definitely multifactorial and insidious within S&C for sure.
Yeah, and I think what I liked about how you identified some of these problems, can you go over like this idea of not supply and demand, but demand and supply and some of the other problems that we're facing?
Yeah, I mean, so people always say, it's a supply and demand issue. This is oversaturated. There's not many jobs. And while that's true, I mean, it's not supply and demand, it's demand and supply in the sense that, strength coaches have to create the demand in that market. And if you look at the way that we market ourselves, it's funny at times, but it's probably not always the best message that we want to send to the outside world to showcase our true competence as professionals. A lot of times strength coaches, it's like they market themselves as just like, oh, I'm under 600 pounds and all I do is lift and all I do is yell or all I do. It's this really hardcore, persona that basically typecasts us just as weight room people. And if anybody's seen me or knows me, I love the weight room just as much as anybody else. We have a 2-car garage that functions exclusively as a home gym. We don't even park our cars in it. But when you look at the role of a strength coach, I look at them as CEOs, problem solvers. I look at them as managers. These are people that solve a lot of different issues, not just the ones that determine the weight on somebody's back or what have you. And so when you think of demand and supply, here's some other ways that coaches are really hurting themselves. This kind of faux humility of running around saying we don't do it for the money. I mean, I've yet to see another career track where people feel the need to so outwardly and passionately express, I don't do it for the money. I mean, you would almost think that there's this perception that is why people get into S&C in the first place, and that certainly wasn't the case with most people I know. I don't think they told their parents they were going to become strength coaches, and all of a sudden their parents were like, Jim, we raised him wrong. He's chasing, Benjamins and Audis and the fast life of money. I mean, nobody thinks that strength coaches get in it for the money. And so even looking at that, what we found is that's really an impression management tactic that for many coaches, while they're what they think they're saying is I'm humble and I'm in it for the right reasons, what they're really doing is devaluing what we do, because the other people that hear this, the people that hire us, the people that hear us say, we don't do it for the money, we'll work whatever hours we need, we'll sacrifice X, Y, and Z. These people look at it and be like, okay, you're never going to be a problem on my budget line. You're never going to ask for a promotion. And then coaches kind of wander around in a daze thinking, well, how is it I'm done this 8 years and I'm still making $30,000? Well, yeah. Funny things happen like that when you just feel the need to like pound your chest and say you're not in it for the money. And it's funny, like it's just, why do we do little things like this? Why do we feel the need to be so prideful in our humility? And that foundational lack of understanding of how to market yourself, how to really convey what you actually do and the myriad of problems you help solve all contributes to this thing where people think we're very easily replaceable. We've typecast ourselves as just guys that like to work out, will work endless hours and don't want to be paid very much. What's hard to replace about that?
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really like about it, is that you really attack this idea about brand, and you really go deep with, the self-branding and personal branding and learning. It's more than just the resume, because people it's not only about just the money, it's also this personal branding. Meanwhile, and let's go to the external, the locus of control, the external is the governing body. And I think one of the things that I kind of learned a long time ago when I had Dan Baker on from the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association was they separate strength and conditioning from fitness. And I think that's a big, huge problem with us is that in terms of strength and conditioning coaches is, and we're seeing more, the pendulum is swinging on the Instagram influencer, right? And people with their shirts off and unqualified people and this idea of this perception of what the strength coach is. And you're talking about strength coaches being also, this big weight room guy. But then I think a lot of people just throw that in with the fitness crowd and the personal training crowd, whereas in Australia, they don't do that.
Yeah, I think people, to your point, misunderstand branding as a whole. And the only reason I, feel that I can criticize this, is because I was in that camp as well. I made that widely known. Like I started off as kind of like a 20-some-odd-year-old curmudgeon, that I was just always taught strength coaches don't do this, they don't do that. But then you learn more about social psychology, you learn more about the true definitions of these terms, and you just grow up, and start diving into other things and understand that like all these things that seem not connected at all are really interconnected. So for example, when it's funny when I hear coaches be like, oh, we don't do branding or personal brands. Well, sure you do. The way you design your templates, the mantras and quotes you have in your weight room, your school logo or the weight room logo, the way you label or even name certain exercises, the terms you use, the way you present yourself, the brand you affiliate with yourself, the brand you affiliate with, the type of music, every single thing you do is some form of impression management. I mean, if you put in a stick of gum after you ate something with a lot of garlic, because you're going to talk to somebody later, that's a form of personal branding and impression management because you don't want to have bad breath. And by managing that, you're showing that person, hey, like I respect you enough to manage this, right? If you go in and meet your in-laws, for the holidays, you take off your shoes and you might be a little bit more eloquent in your speaking than you would be if you're on a road trip with your wife or significant other, some buddies. So people don't understand is personal branding is not about a way to commodify yourself or trick people. It's a communication tactic. It's a way of saying, this is who I am, this is what I can do, and really these are the things that I value. And it's centered around what's distinguishable about you, what may be notable about you, why somebody should care about what you've done, and even you conveying messages to them, like you and the way you brand yourself or the way you manage impression and the way you manage your communication, that shows respect to other people. We see this in customs around the world. A strong handshake in America compared to a head bow in an Asian country. And so I think people just grossly, they're just uneducated. Branding is not a way, it's not social media and commercials. I mean, people go to Google, type in strength and conditioning coach fired or strength and conditioning coach ethics. Like you can Google search examples of strength coaches not acting probably in the most intelligent way. Those results, those facts, those things that are out there, that all contributes to branding as well. So I think people just think branding social media or a way to get people to buy things. That is not where the term's centered. It came around the same time as Stephen Covey's work because people acquired all these new skills, right? And they needed a way to communicate to employers, these are the skills that I have. And I believe it was like 1997 that term arose, and it had nothing to do with being an Instagram influencer.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett, one of the things in our industry, burnout can be a huge problem, and you really address this. There's two parts to this. But one of the things I want you to give us an overview of burnout, because I think with me, I originally didn't really think of it on a deeper level and to the extent that you go into this. And I actually did a little exercise that we'll talk about when we get to internal and external load. But with burnout, I kind of just, we were thinking, oh, okay, yeah, burnout is working, 12 hours a day and you can't do this. And, Saturday, you need Sundays off. Talk to us about, go deeper into about what burnout really is and what are some other things that can contribute to burnout.
Yeah, so this was an interesting one because what we find is, strength and conditioning, if you're gracious and you're not really reaching, is about 60 years old as a profession, give or take, right? Mm-hmm. I know some people will say, well, the Greeks were lifting medicine balls, right? But that wasn't a formalized profession then. But the interesting correlation with that is burnout, just to give people a relative timeline, there's more than 50 years of research on burnout. That just should give people an idea of just how young our field is and just how much more we need to understand before we kind of, go into anything further, right? Like, this is why nobody should be offended when we're saying strength and conditioning is a way to go and isn't at its golden age yet. It's young. When something like Burnout has 50 years behind it, relative to the length of time strength and conditioning has been around, that tells you something. So, Burnout originally had its roots in healthcare, but has really spread over the past few decades to other vocations, just really to the changing nature of the modern workplace, meaning, lower average levels of long-term commitment between employers and employees. People oftentimes, like, even though pay scales may have gone up on average, not every job has the same kind of benefits. And really, it relates to the importance of job fit, but also the management of really 6 key factors within the workplace. And we'll go into those factors in a moment. But the reason burnout, we really hit it on the course, is because so many coaches responded of saying, this is how I feel. Like, I started and I love this field, but like, there were people that were saying, I have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, or I've quit training myself, or, I find excuses to do X, Y, and Z. So when we dove deep, we wanted to really define it, get an idea of what it is, all these, to put it in strength and conditioning or even fitness terms, look at all these asymmetries that contribute to this issue. So the definition of burnout, classical research definition, is it's a psychological syndrome developed in response to chronic emotional and interpersonal stressors on the job. So in the course, just to put it in strength coach terms, I try to help them think of it as load. Just kind of like when you measure the load of athletes through sport and non-sport stressors. So as where external load in a sport context could be the amount of sprints an athlete had to run, right? The amount of repetitions performed in practice, the load or the weight lifted and the volume in the weight room. External load really in the workplace in the context of the coach could be your job duties. It could be role conflicts, or you getting in arguments, with the sport coach or somebody that you have to report to. Personality conflicts within your job, the nature of job insecurity of itself. If you're trying to get something approved financially and you have a lack of support, or just even the competitive climate within S&C as a whole. And so to flip that, just as internal load for performance, sport performance is kind of the athlete's emotional, psychological, and physiological response to those stressors. Well, the same thing happens here too in the sporting context. So we may not go home and it may not be how many reps we performed in practice, but it's like, good Lord, I got in an argument with the head sport coach today. I can't get budget approval. I'm still like, I have more bills due, and I'm still making, $28,000 a year, even though I'm 5 years in the field and have a master's degree. So when you look at how susceptible coaches are to this, it's staggering, because they really find in the research that burnout affects people that are the most passionate and committed to what they do. These aren't people that, they're taking something for granted, or they don't realize how many people they're helping. This happens in military. This happens with firefighters. This happens with social activists. This happens in the medical field, customer service. So that's a huge thing for anybody listening to understand. What we found in the peer-reviewed literature, again, 50 years of it, it has nothing to do with mental toughness, weakness. Going on vacation for a week isn't going to help. Depending on how much you want to dive into the weeds, Anthony, we can go farther, but that gives people an overview, and we give them a lot of strategies and the components of burnout and how to recognize it within.
Yeah, and for me, I kind of did a little exercise. I think you had asked, like, list some things that, might be external load or internal load. And for me, external wasn't such a big factor, but like internal for me, and I think people can relate to this, like one was for me, I want to be smart, right? And I always I used to call it the Gray Kook effect, because when I used to go see Gray Kook, I'd be like, oh man, because I got in this business when I was like 37. I started, right? So I've been in it for 15 years, and at the beginning, I was kind of like, oh my God, I'm never going to catch up. And that really bothered me. So I feel like that was a big load. Also wanting to control everything. And Ron McKeefery is in this course as well. He's talking about, I think he mentions the E-myth, and he talks about, you can't be the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. And I think too many of us, when we get in our own business, we want to have our hands in everything, and we end up trying to be everything. So for me, that was an internal load, wanting everyone to like me. Also, that's another thing, like not kind of maybe, like, for example, let's say everybody's saying, oh, Conscious Coaching is the best book, you got to read it. And I automatically might feel like I have to love it and if I don't say I love it, even though I love it because I'm mentioned in it, but you automatically feel like like you have to go along with some of the people that you feel that, and so that's another for me internal load. And then I think this is a big one, and you talk about this, wanting to have integrity, and a lot of people kind of beat their chest and think integrity is, well, I'm not gonna, I'm only doing it I'm doing it for the love, and I'm not doing it for the money. And you think that's integrity, but it's really not. So I just wanted to mention that to kind of go over like some of the internal load that I felt like I feel like I'm having. So that was an epiphany for me.
No, you're spot on. I mean, you're spot on both those aspects. I mean, one, just to address the last one, again, that's what's funny when coaches say they don't believe in marketing or whatever, because that person that's like that loudly and vocally and on Twitter and on everything is like, oh, I'm not on the, I don't do this and that. I'm in it for the right reasons. Like they're marketing. Those people are marketing. What they're trying to convey is I'm some kind of true blue, hardcore, I don't believe it. What they're looking for is social approval for people like them. And that's what is always so funny is people don't realize, and the social science literature backs this, is literally almost everything somebody does is an impression management tactic. I mean, and everybody knows these kinds of people. I mean, I'll go to conferences to this day where somebody will stand up and be like, well, you won't find me on social media. I'm in the trenches. Okay, well, guess what, man? Like that's a marketing tactic. You're trying to quote unquote paint yourself as this type of person, no different than the guy that's taking shirtless selfies and all this other nonsense on Instagram. Now, is there different in terms of ethics and what have you? Well, sure. I mean, if somebody's pretending to be an expert and they're not, but at the same time, if somebody's getting up there and trying to act like, they're holier than thou just because they don't have a Twitter account or because they think that the strength coaches should work 12-hour days and never take a vacation and not have a personal life and all that, well, you're a hypocrite. Because then you're telling your athletes to not only meet challenges head on in their life, but to grow up and be responsible professionals and providers. So it's just interesting. We have a field that doesn't take its own advice, and they don't recognize, what the messages they're really conveying. And so within that load, I mean, to your point, you brought up some great examples. People need to understand it's not just the workplace. People can have an excellent workplace, but that RPE is still affected, so to speak, by what's going on in your life. Like, for example, I've moved 15 times in the name of strength and conditioning. And that's, whether my undergrad, graduate assistantship, internship, a promotion, whatever. And at the beginning, there was very low external load posed by me having to kind of get up, pack everything in my Honda Accord and move, right? It's exciting. Holy crap, I'm going to a new state. I can't wait to learn stuff. Well, around your 15th time, and when you're married, and when you have like a home gym to move and a house, and like you can't find all your books, and then you're like you have to be halfway across the world to do a clinic, and then you got athletes coming in the next week. That external load is much higher. And so one thing we do in the course too is we provide a lot of printouts. So we created a customized workplace RPE and work-life RPE, where coaches can go through these 6 dimensions of burnout that we talk about in the course, and they can actually give themselves a score. So in the course, and this is research done by a woman named Christina Maslach, in the course we call them the succumbing 6. And I'm not going to go into their definitions right now because I don't want to make everybody's ears bleed. But essentially what you're looking at is these 6 factors are primary determinants in regards to workload or in regards to burnout. So workload. Right. And this is kind of whether you have too much to do, not enough time to do something, a lack of resources, all these kinds of things. And it can be ancillary tasks. Don't just think of it as coaching. This could be admin, research, recruiting, marketing, management, balancing the budget, whatever. Then you go into control. And control has to do with a degree of autonomy. How much discretion do you have over not just what you do, but how you do it? Again, we see this a lot in strength and conditioning. People that are highly educated, they're head strength and conditioning coaches, but they're told what they can and can't do by the sport coach. Do you feel micromanaged? Are you asked to do unethical stuff like crazy punishments for athletes? Then there's reward. Now, this isn't so much what people think. And this is why, again, it's humorous when people think I don't do it for the money. It's not always about the money. Social rewards are even sometimes more important, especially to strength coaches, than material rewards. Like, no matter what anybody says in our field about them, not really wanting recognition, most strength coaches want people to recognize their value. If you're like any craftsman wants to be known for doing good work. Now, whether that's shouted from the mountaintops or just respected across peers, whatever. But most people want recognition for their contribution, right? Do they see you as a true coach? Are you helpful? We get into community next. Community is your relationships in the workplace and across the field. This is kind of tied into social capital, which we go into within the course. And then the last two, fairness. This is really related to feeling gatekept. And a lot of young coaches feel this way. They've done the internships, a graduate assistantship. They've kind of checked all these boxes that everybody tells them they should check. And then they just can't seem to get anybody to read their resume, or they can't get in front of anybody. And it's this feeling of running into glass ceilings, and this is something you see with the gender gap. I mean, something that is so often. We have Andrea Hootie involved in the course as well. And just talking about, why has this stuff not really been addressed yet? We kind of whisper about it, but we save our loudest voices for training debates instead of things that are affecting the coaches within the field. So, same thing of private sector coaches can never win the master strength coach status ever. I mean, that's crazy. You look at a guy think about Lauren Landau, a friend of both of ours, right? Now, he's been a strength coach for however long. Now, if he was only in the private sector, no matter how many people he trains, he could never win strength and conditioning coach of the year or master strength coach status. But now that he's in the NFL, if he stays there long enough and meets some criteria, now all of a sudden he can do that. Now, should anybody get in this to try to get those kinds of awards? Does Lauren even care? Probably not. But the point is there's whether it's gender gap, whether it's these social rewards given by governing bodies, whether it's people even just being able to get their resume read, there's not a whole lot of room to move within here. And then the final one, it just comes down to values, meaning, why are you there? What do you care about? There are some people that take jobs and they're there just because it's the affiliation's well known, or, they won a lot of national titles, or, it seems to be the go-to gym in New York City. So they'll stay there even though the place may not align with their values because they kind of want the association and credibility. So when these 6 things come together in whatever format, and again, that is just a very brief snapshot, the chances of burnout are significantly higher across domains.
Excellent. Nice. I like to surround myself with people who like to surround themselves with other great people. And I think what you've done in this course, with Andrea, with Ron McKeefery, your dad, which is very cool.
Donnell too. Donnell Boucher. We got him out of the woodwork.
That's right. I forgot he's in the bonus section. That's right. Let's talk about Ron first. How to be a success in our industry. Ron is a big friend of the show. He's just on recently after his book was out. And he had the book CEO Strength Coach, which is kind of related to what he probably was talking about in here. Talk to us about his role in this course.
Yeah, a lot of this was wanting to pay homage to people in the past that have tried to bridge this gap, and so that's why it only felt right, to get people like Ron involved, to get Andrea Hootie involved, to get Donnell, even Andy McCloy, because we also wanted the course to relate to people that wanted to own their own facilities, right? Because even though a lot of people in the team setting really gravitate towards this, some have said that they're even going to start using it as something that they're like, listen, we can't teach this in the scope. So what's cool is when we were beta testing this, we got a lot of folks in the team setting that are like, this is now something our interns are going to have to go through before we'll give them a letter of recommendation, because so much of it just touches on professionalism, and at least we know they'll be representing us well. But Ron's been beating this drum for a while, so it was a no-brainer to get him involved. And what we wanted Ron to really talk about is, in the past, I remember he said something that stuck with me. He's like, man, it's crazy, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but he's like, there's so many people that I've respected in the field and that I learned under, and now they're getting to a certain age that they're coming to me and asking for help with their resumes, because they just realized that even though they had all these years of successful coaching, they just didn't adapt, and the landscape's changed. And some of them want to start a podcast. Some of them want to start a business. And they just, the calls quit coming, and now they don't know what to do. And so Ron really kind of outlined and revisited the whole technician, manager, entrepreneur piece and said, listen, just like you have to understand that everything that goes into your program and your philosophy, you have got to look at these things internally with the way that you shape your future as well. And so, he did a great job talking about some of the things that he learned from the E-Myth, He even talked about what he did to help kind of keep himself out of debt, and the approach, now whether they set up emergency funds, whether he did the podcast, whether he got involved in other projects. But, Ron is somebody that is really, I think, tried to spearhead this early. I just think that there are a lot of people that probably weren't as receptive to it as they should have been. And so the only way me, Ron, Andy McCloy, Coach Hootie, we just felt like the only way to really get coaches to unite and pay attention and understand this isn't a private sector thing. This isn't a team thing. It's not even just a strength and conditioning thing, is we had to kind of pool our collective focus and our tips here. And so that was a big part of what he was willing to do. And he spent a whole day with us doing so.
Very cool. And I think one of the things that, like I said, I was at Functional Strength Coach 7 yesterday, Coach Boyle. And early on, like I said, he was talking about these different books, but he went over a whole thing on finances and, understanding. One of the most important books he read was just talking about the compounding effect, right? And he was showing the first house he bought. He's bought over like 30 houses or something. His daughter's
really?
His daughter's 19. She's lived in. She claims 24. I think Mike claims 26. I forget. Because Mike will buy a house and he'll flip it. And, his first house that he bought, that he lived in, was a 2-family home. And he basically, they rented the upstairs. And in 6 months, he made, I don't even know, like $50,000 on it, plus the tax advantages. And so he's just talking, the point is that, like, these are things you need to think about. I remember when Tony Robbins came out with his book Unshakable, he had a thing where he said, if you buy 5, I'll give you, it's all the money's going here. So I bought 5 and I sent them to all young strength coaches like Brendan Rearick and Kevin Carr and Jason and Lauren Pack and Anna Taco, because I was like, I wish somebody had sent me this book when I was in my 20s, even though I was doing other things. But still, just this idea of like, start now. You don't even need a lot of money to start. Talk to us about your dad's role in this, and he's 40 years in the business. So what was his role here?
Yeah. So, I've tried to make it clear that I was clueless about a lot of this stuff, just like many other coaches, because we're not formally taught this. And, I ignored a resource that I had in my backyard literally for a long time, just because I had so much tunnel vision in terms of what I was doing. Well, my dad's been a licensed financial advisor for over 40 years. And we make it very clear in the course, like, all the information we give is general in nature, right? Like, we're not like, he's not sitting here telling people exactly everything those individuals should do. It just giving people sound advice that they maybe haven't been exposed to. And, one of the reasons, just to provide context for that, is a 2018 survey of literally more than 2,000 strength coaches showed that despite 52% of us having master's degrees or beyond, many coaches still average anywhere from the low 30,000s to mid 70,000s in terms of annual income. And so one thing my father says is like, that's great, but coaches and really anybody should never try to manage their money themselves, primarily because we lack what he always calls the 3 T's. And I'm surprised he didn't make me get a tattoo of this, on my body sometime, because he always used to say this growing up. And he says, you lack the time, the temperament, and the talent. That's not our purview. It's kind of like, would we go in and try to diagnose an illness and prescribe medication? No, like that's not something a strength coach should do. And so, but people look at these finances and they think, well, I can do that. Like, I got a knack for this. I use this brand a lot, or I go to Costco a lot. Let me just buy Costco stock. It's not, the economics is far more complex than that, even far more complex than anything coaches deal with in their ambit of periodization schemes and monitoring and data. Another thing he says is like, listen, even if you're in debt, you've got to pay yourself first. And I know this always goes contrary to a lot of people that listen to Dave Ramsey. They say, well, Dave Ramsey says never get a credit card. Dave Ramsey says this. Listen, like, again, it goes back to this black and white. If you're somebody that isn't going to like responsibly manage your money, and if you have a credit card, you're going to go crazy and just buy all this stuff, then yeah, you probably shouldn't own a credit card. But people need credit in their life. They're gonna have to do a credit check if you buy a house, if you buy a car, if any of these things. And so, getting a no interest credit card or paying your credit cards off in full, those things can help you. There's some debt that is good debt. And so he talks a lot about that. But the other point is, I heard a strength coach once, he was like, listen, we're really not gonna invest until we paid off all of our debt. The issue with that is now you're relying on that paycheck. Every paycheck you get, you're now relying to pay off debt, but your money's not making any money. And that's where people have got to understand compound interest in the financial world is akin to progressive overload in the strength and conditioning or fitness world, right? Like you actually want, even if it's five. So people they ask my dad, they're like, well, how much should I start with? I don't make anything. And he's like, listen, do you have $5? Like literally if you put $5 and there's so many apps now, like I know I use Wealthfront. Wealthfront manages a good percentage of and Wealthfront doesn't pay me to say this, but like there's Betterment, there's Robinhood, there's Acorns, there's all these things now where in the past, you used to have to like be able to have, I don't know, like $5,000-$10,000 or something to give some broker that you've never met to manage this, and you're paying all this money in fees. Now there is limitless tools for people to be able to use it, even if they pay them. Like my wife. For a while she was contributing literally $5 a week, and it was just on auto recurring so she wouldn't forget. And then if she got a raise, great, like she'd do a bigger lump payment later. So he talks about things like that. Like we have a whole glossary of financial terms. We did an hour Q&A that people, when they do the course, and like they won't just get the slides and the videos. We know a lot of people are auditory listeners as well. So we have like a podcast that my dad did with me. We're not releasing it in any other forum, and it's all financial stuff. It's just literally me nailing him with Q&A of stuff that I didn't understand.
Excellent. Well, let's finish up here. I want to just remind everybody the course is called Valued, and it's going to be open from May 1st to May 5th. Brett, just give us this last 1 minute pitch on why you want people to really get into this program.
Real simple, guys. Like dig the well before you're thirsty. Like what's the alternative? Like to have no backup plan and no education on anything other than training? Like is that really a viable way to live out your career and your life, no matter what path you want to take? So it's pretty cut and dry. Like we can either expand our education of career management, financial management, all these things, just professionalism in general, or we can just continue to hope that somebody's going to do that for us. But I really don't think it's that likely that the latter is going to happen.
Absolutely. Well, I can say that I did peruse this course. I watched the whole introduction. I've gone through a bunch of the different modules this morning for a couple hours, and I love what you've done here. As always, you always bring a lot of integrity, and it's not just hey, I've been doing this for X amount of years. This is a lot of research in here too. So, Brett, great job with this. We're going to have links on strengthcoachpodcast.com and continuefit.com. But what's the link, just so if somebody has it in their head? Is it at Art of Coaching?
Real quick, so people can go to valuedcourse.com. But yes, if you go to artofcoaching.com and just the courses tab, you'll see it there. And like Ant mentioned, this has 155 resources on it, and those resources are all available to you guys. 90% of this stuff has to deal with my doctoral research, especially where it looks at perception, impression management, the psychological aspects of why people don't want to change and how to get people to change their behavior. So not only are the references widely available for you guys, but this is stuff that I'm doing as part of my doctoral commitment. So yeah, this isn't stuff just reproduced from a bunch of books that I thought would be fun. But valuedcourse.com, May 1st through the 5th is the first opening. We literally do not know when or if there will be a second one. As always, it depends on the feedback we get from the first opening. So if you're on the fence, just understand, guys, there's payment plans available. This stuff is going to cost you just as much as a trip to the national conference would, without the flights, without anything else like that. And so, this is definitely in your budget if you look hard enough to find it. And I promise you, this has been 2 years of my life. I think the only thing that I put even close to as much work on this was conscious coaching and my other course. So hope to see you inside.